How you doing today?
Hey, I'm okay. I'm okay. Kind of a weird morning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's you know what? As much as it kind of reminded me when Amy started off the show by talking about the 30 killed in Somalia,
Exactly.
and so it just kind of that hits you in the face that we're surrounded by violence. We just like everybody, any other human being, you just don't notice it until it's next door.
Well, yeah, that's right.
when
That's right.
when it happens in your house, then you're like, whoa,
Right.
what's
And
going on?
Yeah, it's really miraculous the way life goes on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of, I've noticed that in the wake of the attacks in New York and Washington in September 2001, there was a lot of conversation about talking with kids about trauma and about violence. Not much has been said yet in relation to Boston. I don't know whether we're becoming a little immune to it because with school shootings and things happening, but especially in the case of Boston because there was an 8-year-old boy killed. I'm sure kids today in school are talking about it. It's all over the media. But there are some very specific guidelines for parents and teachers and anybody who interacts with kids about talking about trauma. And the Child Mind Institute had some just basic ideas here that I thought I'd just run through to give people a sense, because we're so concerned about kids. I think seeing, if anybody watched CNN last night or MSNBC, you saw the endless tape loop that showed the blast and showed people hurt. And one of the things that they do tell you is, to know your own child, to have a sense of who they are and what they can handle, and to find out what your child already knows. And the other part, which is also kind of interesting in the media reports, is that there was a great focus on resilience, talking about what people did to help people in need, about the fact that there were first responders there, but there were also members of the public that stepped up and helped people who were hurt or shocked by this. And there's that idea, too, that when you tell the story, when you talk about it, you remain calm and not be emotional yourself. Because
Exactly.
that's what you project on your child. And you don't want to tell them too much. Stick to concrete things. Don't go off and speculate. Just tell them the basics and kind of tell them what they ask. Answer their questions, but don't go beyond that. But I would imagine that there are plenty of teachers who were dealing with this morning.
I find it, and I was commenting yesterday with my bride. I don't know whether we like to sometimes look back in the 50s when I was growing up and call it the good old days, but maybe we were just naive. But I didn't see violence or know anyone who died until I was 18. So I was in Vietnam.
Yeah.
I went through grammar school, high school, and my children, when they were in high school, they were going to a funeral every couple of months.
Yeah.
The reality of life and death with them was entirely different.
Yeah, it's
than
very
it was
immediate.
With me. I was,
Yeah.
like I said, I can't. If I look back in my childhood through my teenage years, one of the leaders in my drum and bugle corps was killed, and goodness, I went to that wake and wasn't any good for 3 weeks.
Yeah, sure.
and now people are not sensitive because it's all around you now.
Well, you know what I think it is? It's because everything is transmitted. I remember,
that's true.
I was growing up, you watched the Vietnam War on the evening news. You saw dead bodies. You saw the dead bodies coming home. So there was that level of immediacy. Now you look at this event yesterday, and it was instantly, the images were available.
Yeah.
It was and non-edited imagery. So even though I would say I would be willing to guess that the average kid doesn't experience death firsthand in their life more often now, but they have that feeling because they're they're bombarded.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, we didn't have the multiple channels.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I hate to say it that way, but yeah, that was the. Let's put it this way: that was the perception. Okay.
That was a
And yesterday there were some Columbia County runners that were at the marathon, and actually one of the runners, Allison Connor, is the daughter of a longtime Hudson running coach, Jack Connor, who's also city judge here in Hudson.
Okay.
And the whole family was there to see Allison run, and lucky for her, she finished under 4 hours. So she was already finished by the time the event occurred, but their panic was that she couldn't find the family at that point.
Right.
But everything worked out fine. But everybody who went down there managed to get home safely last night, so that was a good thing.
Yeah, I guess I'm kind of lucky because I don't have the 6-7-year-old. They got their mother and father to talk to about it.
Yeah.
And but I can imagine that it's quite different trying to relate to a child now for a parent, because you can't hide anything from them like my folks did me.
Right.
So, even though we grew up with, and this is kind of odd to something else I was talking about. I grew up in an age where afternoon television, just about every show, especially the westerns, problems were solved by violence. Simple as that. The problem was, if you had a problem, you shot that problem.
Yeah. Welcome to America.
And that's how the show ended. Yeah. So
I know.
We kind of inundated with that. So.
Yeah. So supposedly this morning, we were just talking about this before we went on mic, that law enforcement is supposed to be having some sort of a briefing.
Yeah, I'm trying to find
soon or whatever.
Yeah,
so I don't know what that means there, but I'm sure this story will be evolving throughout the day. Just a couple quick real hardcore education things. PINS is in the national spotlight. We've been ahead of the curve here at WGXC. I'm hoping maybe people are listening, but there's a New York Times story last week about the PINS process and sending kids through the school to prison pipeline. Also, it made Democracy Now! This morning. Amy had a short brief, and she interviewed a young man who was very articulate about on the subject of discipline. So that's a good thing. Everybody's talking about it now. If anybody missed it, you should try to go back into our archives and look at the Corey Fisher-Hoffman's show from last week.
Yes, very good show.
Yeah,
Corey's show was excellent.
Yeah, where we talked about that. And those conversations in Hudson are ongoing. I think there may be another program coming up at TSL.
Well, is anybody? Do you see signs of anyone's eyes being opened to what some of us feel is this is like a highway? When you start a child off at 12 or 13, you might as well just give him his prison number now.
Well, in some cases, there are kids. One young man who was on one of the panels at TSL, he was pinsed, as they say, when he was 10 years old, and it's a tremendous weight on a kid. And in most cases, you're talking about young people who already have issues that they're struggling with at home, whether it be the loss of a parent, whether it be a loss of a home, whatever it might be. And then they come to school and they act out. But many of these kids talk about the experience and say that school was the only place where they had trouble. They could leave school, go home, interact in the community, and they would be perfectly fine. And one young man in particular on the panel, it was really quite poignant. He said that he made the decision to drop out of school because he didn't want to go to jail. So, think about that.
I'm having flashbacks to the 1960s. I probably would have been pinched.
Well, that's it. It criminalizes
There's a little
normal,
question in my
in many
mind.
cases, normal, developmentally appropriate behavior. As much as we, as adults, teenagers get on our nerves. I think that's fair to
Yeah,
say.
which is what I did with spectacularly.
Yeah,
Okay,
but
I
that's
was
their
good
job,
at it.
That's what they're supposed to do. But
I was a professional.
but yeah, no, it's very sad. It's a really tragic thing, and but it's good to see that word is getting out. For a very long time, nobody talked about it, and especially not here. So that is a very good thing. Quickly, there's been a lot about testing in the news in the last week. The State Education Department released a video last Thursday basically giving parents a rundown of what to expect, kind of putting them on notice, saying testing is going to be more rigorous this year. Be prepared that the scores are going to be low. So stay tuned. There's also been pushback on the part of the teachers union. They also issued a statement last week around the same time, stating their opposition to grades 3 through 8 testing. And of course, there's the component there where testing is tied into teacher evaluations. There are pockets of resistance throughout the state. Kingston, Saratoga Springs, New Paltz, those boards of education all passed largely symbolic resolutions in opposition to testing. But as far as I know, all those districts are going to participate when testing begins very soon. So that's something I'm sure that story will continue.
Yeah, that's another one. Between the testing and the pins.
Yeah, I know.
And the elections, of course, coming up.
Yeah, and that was just a note on Ichabod Crane. They adopted their 13-14 budget last week. Totals nearly $35 million. That calls for a 2.9 tax levy increase. They received more than $500,000 more in state aid than anticipated, so they put that sum toward the tax levy increase and some towards programs. They are restoring football under that plan. It'll be a 3-year phase-in, and they included modified sports. So I imagine there are a lot of people very happy about that out there. On that ballot, they will also have a proposition to purchase 6 school buses. That's for a little bit less than $400,000. And the other thing ongoing out there is that they're recruiting community members to take part in strategic planning. They're looking for members of that committee. The deadline for people to fill out an application is April 26th. I think you can go to the district's website and find the materials and get the information.
Well, that's good. I'm always glad. Of course, they're my neighbors, and they went through to get their sports program. I had never seen high school and parents do what they did last year, which is just they went out in the neighborhood and got the money together.
Yeah.
And so I got to hand it to them. That's,
well, they're a big sports district. They really, their running program is well known, and they compete against a lot of the larger schools, but they're very aggressive athletically. So I'm sure that this has been a long time coming in terms of the development of the proposal and figuring out a way to do it. So that's how it works.
Yay!
And I guess that's it.
Yeah, I guess. We have an abbreviated. Well, it wasn't abbreviated.
Yeah, actually.
And the press conference hasn't started yet.
Yeah.
I wonder what happened to it.
Well,
Thank you for coming in and rescuing me, Lynn.
So, yeah, when I was a kid, it was only old people who died.